Hey there everyone, Boylon here and hope you're all having an awesome day. Today we're going to be talking a bit more about Dark Dimension 4. So this is on the back of the blog post on Tuesday that there was news that it'll be coming, hopefully before the end of the year, since they were focusing on a 2020 roadmap. And alongside that, we'll be getting the release of Doctor Doom finally, for those who complete it. This is very reminiscent of Dark Dimension 2 or Fear the Darkness, where Ultron was given out as a reward there. I kind of expect a similar reward pattern to this, but who knows? Maybe they'll give us some red stars for Doctor Doom as well, or maybe we'll get Doctor Doom and some red stars for Ultron for completing it, but time will tell, and they'll let us know more, I'm sure, about that. And I know what everyone's probably going to say, and this is a bit of a premature video given how very few people have even beat Dark Dimension 3, myself included. You know, I'm on the last node of City 4 now, but I think there are some ways that you can sort of prepare for it anyways, and keep in the back of your mind while you're upgrading characters. Or not upgrading in some cases. So I'm going to talk about the things that you can work on now, and things to consider even while going through modes like Dark Dimension 2 and 3. I'll also be touching briefly on ISO 8 as well, and how I think that might have an impact on Dark Dimension 4. So without further ado, let's get into it. Right, so here we are in my roster. So I just want to go over Dark Dimension 2 very briefly, at least from a roster perspective, because when it comes to especially Dark Dimension 3 and beyond, we're going to be thinking about characters who are worth investing into with our orange gear so it doesn't become a total waste. And let me tell you that there are characters in my roster that I sort of regret taking to Tier 13 because it didn't really matter too much. And there's also characters that I brought up for DD2 that you don't really need to do so much now because there's more better and well-rounded characters to choose from. And as we go through my roster, kind of ignore all the hearts. That I have a lot of hearts right now because I'm kind of, with the Symbiote Spider-Man milestones, I'm sort of leveling up a lot of characters that I'm bringing up to the level 70, 71. So kind of ignore that. Here I have like almost 4 rows of hearts right now. So in terms of Dark Dimension 2 characters that I brought up to the Tier 13 level, which I don't actually really use for, or I'm really considering for, Dark Dimension 3, is you can see characters like Jessica Jones, Rocket Raccoon, which I took to 13. I'm not entirely sure why I did that. I think I was using Guardians or BKT very heavily in Arena and Raids, so I thought it was a good idea. I think this was an afterthought, perhaps, after I beat Fear the Darkness or Dark Dimension 2 for the first time. Loki, I believe that was the same thing when, as Guardians first came out, you know, they were the best war defense team, and I kind of wanted to get them up gear-wise. So there's a lot of characters here. Spider-Man, Brute, which I use quite heavily in Dark Dimension 2, but I don't think these are characters that you need now. Who else do I have? Minerva is 13, but definitely a recommended character for 14 and Dark Dimension 3. I have Thor, Agent Coulson, Shield Security, Star-Lord, Juggernaut, so Sif, Nick Fury, which I used in Dark Dimension 2. So quite a bit of characters that I have at Tier 13, but I have no intentions of bringing up to Tier 14 and for Dark Dimension 3. So that's really important, guys. So if you're as far back as Dark Dimension 2, then I would consider the characters that are sort of recommended for Dark Dimension 3 and using that as a somewhat of a guideline as to what characters you want to bring up at 13. That way you're not wasting any resources to actually go on further, because like I said, there's a bunch of characters here which I didn't really need to bring up to Tier 13, but I did so because I didn't know Dark Dimension 3 was coming, and therefore I didn't know what the requirements would be, and I kind of just spent my orange resources on characters that I wanted to at the time. So my first bit of advice is don't just upgrade characters willy-nilly. You know, make sure that you're upgrading characters that you are going to use moving forward, especially for Dark Dimension 3 and now Dark Dimension 4. So if you can get any characters that would be usable, presumably usable, for Dark Dimension 4, then that would be all the better to bring those into Dark Dimension 3. So these are characters like, I'm sure will be used no problem. Hela, probably. So I don't have her at Tier 14, but I know a lot of other people do, and she's probably one of those characters. Colossus, for example, which I'll be taking up to 14 actually after I finish my first run of Dark Dimension 3, but that's probably a different story and for a different video on my Dark Dimension 3 specifically. And you know, Ebony Maw, Symbiote Spider-Man, Carnage, you know, these are probably characters because they have that Dark Dimension tag. I probably will be used no matter what, I think. So the symbiote's probably for sure in that one. Phoenix probably as well. You know, there's some characters that you can kind of already tell which are probably going to be used in Dark Dimension 4 when it does eventually get released. And so just to go over like a brief list of characters that I think would be dually viable for Tier 13, sorry, for Dark Dimension 2 and Dark Dimension 3, out of the characters that I sort of have leveled up or are close to, you know, characters like Hela, which I think are going to be useful all the way around, Phoenix for sure, Colossus, and this isn't an exhaustive list at all, Ebony Maw, Symbiote Spider-Man, you know, Phoenix, I think I said that already. Black Bolt, you know, these are characters that Scientist Supreme. These are characters that you can definitely use to get through Dark Dimension 2, and then use these characters as well for Dark Dimension 3 as well if you need to. So this is kind of what you want to keep in mind if you are going through Dark Dimension 2, if you're still back there. Then try to think about the characters that you're going to want to bring into 3 as well. And then that's where we can start building on to ideas of Dark Dimension 4, I think. Oh, and I forgot to add Minerva. Minerva is definitely going to be someone you want to consider for Dark Dimension 2 and 3, because I think that'll definitely help you as well. Now, we're going to move on a little bit and start to talk about some of the things that I think that they could be doing for Dark Dimension 4. So, on top of Gear Tier 15, which, like I said, Orange Gear, it's still in the orange ring, as far as I'm aware, for Tier 15, because I've actually seen some characters in Blitz with the Gear Tier 15, and they just have a larger orange ring around them, that it's going to still involve using orange gear items. So what have we not done yet in Dark Dimension? So we have had origin lanes in terms of global, cosmic, and city in Dark Dimension 3. Dark Dimension 2 didn't really have anything. It was just flat Gear 13. So we're going to have Dark Dimension 4, which is going to be Gear Tier 15. And what else could they do? Now, I was thinking, because that's kind of the only few things that are left, you know, I don't think they're going to rehash the sort of the city, global, cosmic, and city thing again. But what they could do, maybe, is they could do like gear origins. They could do things like bio. They could do things like tech, you know, tech mystic, skill, and whatever. They could do that maybe, and so that would be quite interesting, because now you're breaking it up into, what is that, five different gear types. I think there is. I was trying to remember how many exactly there were. I think it's 5. And so where are they all? In mystic, you know, bio, mystic, mutant, skill, and tech. I was like, why can't I remember anything? So, you know, who knows? I'm not saying that this is the case, and I don't know if this is going to be the case or not. But maybe that they'll make us sort of create teams around that. Now, that could be presenting quite a bit of a challenging problem, because there is a lot of characters and a lot of teams that are sort of broken up into different gear sets. So if they did that, you wouldn't necessarily be able to have one specific team to go through it. The only teams that may be full Mystic off the top of my head, or maybe even close, would be Supernatural, or Asgardians is pretty close with those Sif, for example, if they did it that way. I think that could be one possible avenue that they could do. But I think what's the most important thing to do, what can you do now to prepare for that? And I kind of mentioned it a little bit as I was going through this, and it's the gear. It's the orange gear. There's such a huge orange gear crunch. Just for example, like, let's take Minerva, because I haven't taken her to 14 yet. You know, you need, like, for the health pieces, you need 150 health catalyst parts just to get that item. And then let's find something that actually has the superior basic catalyst. So you need 20 times 3, you need 60 times 5, you need 300 superior basic catalyst. Now this is a huge jump from what you need for characters to go from 12 to 13. So can I find a character that my Venom, I think. So he's at 12, needing to go to 13. So equivalently, you know, you only need 60 health catalyst parts instead of 150. So that's like a 2.5 times jump. And then for basic catalyst, superior basic catalyst, you need 120. So you're needing 60 of these health catalysts, and that jumps up to 150 for Gear 14, and then you have 60 of these superior basic 120 of these basic catalysts, jumping up to 300. So it's roughly like a 2.5 times orange gear jump. So what happens if you did that with the orange gear for Tier 15, let's say hypothetically? You know, then that would be something like 2.5 times 150. Doing some mental math really quick, that's 375 orange catalyst parts for that, and then for the other ones would be, you go 300 that you need for these ones. The superior basic catalyst, 2.5 times jump would be 750. So that's a huge jump just for one item, or for one gear piece, right? So if that's what ends up happening for Gear Tier 15, then you're going to need a crap ton of orange gear to accumulate to upgrade your characters. So I mean, it sounds easier said than done, but I think hoarding orange gear pieces that you don't need would be the first step towards Tier 15. And so what does that really mean in the whole grand scheme of things? And well, I think that means that you can't really deviate too much from the characters that you're going to be using from Dark Dimension 3. So once you get to Dark Dimension 3 level and you have your Tier 14 characters, don't take up too many characters after that. And especially after you beat Dark Dimension 3 for the first time and maybe the second time, you know, don't put gear into the characters that I did, you know, after Dark Dimension 2 that I, you know, here in my 13s, my Agent Coulson, my Thor, Juggernaut, you know, Sif, unless you're using Sif for Dark Dimension 3, then that's another matter. Nick Fury, you know, there's a bunch of characters that I sort of used for Dark Dimension 2, you know, in the beginning, but then I never really used or made use of too much after that. So you really need to be careful about who you're taking up, because that is the most important thing that you can do. So focus on the 15 characters, I would say 15, you know, the characters that you need for Global, Cosmic, and City. So after you're done the first round, you're typically probably not going to have a full set of 15 characters by the time you finish the first run. I think I have I have 11 characters, I believe, at tier 14. I have 4 Global, 4 Cosmic, and 3 City, and that's basically what I'm going to use to finish the first attempt. After that, I'm gonna build up Colossus, I think, to round out my Global, and then I'm thinking of bringing up my Black Order to get up to the Cosmic lane. Mostly because I use them a lot. If you've seen any of my videos about Arena, I use Black Order all the time in Arena. So I think that getting them up to 14 will be good, and I think I can also utilize them in the Cosmic lane as well. And then for City, of course, I want to get Venom up, and I don't know who my 5th is going to be. Thought about Squirrel Girl, because I do have a 7 red star of her sitting around. And basically, you know, so those 15 characters are characters that I'm going to be considering moving into tier 15 for Dark Dimension 4. Now, all of those characters might not be characters that I'll use, because we don't know what the exact requirements are going to be for the lanes and whatnot, but at least that's a good basis of which I can take characters up to tier 15. So those are usable characters which I got through Dark Dimension 3, and those are characters very likely to be used in Dark Dimension 4 in one form or another. Other than that, what you could do is, you know, just keep doing what you're doing, you know, building up your orange gear and kind of holding on to it. I think if you don't need to spend it, don't spend it. If you know, if you're not sure if you should take a character up to tier 13 or tier 14, then don't do it. You know, tier 12 is a very valid place to keep your characters at if you aren't sure what you're going to be doing with them. I mean, you can still get a decent power level out of them there. If they're not a super important character, don't take them into the orange level, because I think that's one of the things that you can learn the most from, and you know, by preparing well enough so that you can stay ahead of everyone else in terms of when Dark Dimension 4, the more details get announced, and so we can have a better idea of who exactly we're taking up and who we need to take up. But I don't see why a lot of the characters that are already in Dark Dimension 3 won't be valid to some extent in Dark Dimension 4. So that kind of, even though the gear crunch is probably going to be super heavy, and even more than it already is for tier 14, I think having the characters ready that you are going to take up and that you know you're going to use is even better. And so hoarding, maybe possibly holding on to that gear that you get as well from the release once you finish Dark Dimension 3 for the second time, even holding on to some of that orange gear, because you don't know how much of that might be used in getting your characters up through into the tier 15 level. So that's one thing that I can recommend doing right now. And this is the point where I sort of want to pivot to the ISO 8 preview that we had last month, because I think this is also going to be really important when thinking about Dark Dimension 4, because in terms of the stats, you know, what are we missing? And there's going to be, it's going to be kind of like a Stark Tech-ish system with more upgrades that you can do for your characters. But on the surface, ISO 8 is going to actually include, well, let's see the photo here. So you're going to get a total of, I believe they said in the video, I believe there was a Strike Time video, or some of the other content creators were going over ISO 8 particularly, that you'll actually get a bonus attribute of up to 10% for all your stats. So that's why I kind of said it's kind of like a Stark Tech thing, because you're getting flat bonuses for your characters. Now, I think this is going to come before Dark Dimension 4 personally, because I was thinking to myself, you know, what's going to make Dark Dimension 4 different than Dark Dimension 3? As well, I think this is going to be included because I think we're going to need it. I mean, if any of you have gone through Dark Dimension 3 or even watched any of my videos of it, you'll know that people can get one shot pretty easily, and you know, and it's not a lot of fun. Actually, Dark Dimension 3 is probably a lot less fun than I had in Dark Dimension 2. At least I could, you know, make some strategy around it. To be honest, there's very little strategy involved in Dark Dimension 3. I think it's just a lot of sort of beating your head against the characters, and eventually you'll get through it. You know, if you have the right full team of 5, maybe you can present some sort of strategy, but otherwise there's really not a whole lot. So I think that ISO 8 is going to play a large role into sort of gearing up and preparing yourself for Dark Dimension 4 as well. You know, unfortunately, there's not really much we can do about that now because the system's not in place, obviously, but it's something to consider at least going forward. So when the system does come out, just like I said about the gear, you'll want to consider what kind of ISO 8 characters are you working on or which ISOs are you working on for those particular characters. You're going to want to first do it for characters that you are going to be using for Dark Dimension 3, and then subsequently probably Dark Dimension 4 as well. So you're not going to want to waste this, you know, just like Orange Gear, you're not going to want to waste that on characters that you're really not sure if you're going to be using or not. So I don't want to talk too much about ISO 8 specifically, because there's not a whole lot of detail out there yet. You know, it's work in progress. There's going to be different classes which are going to add new attributes and abilities to your characters. So I think this might be a bit of a way to sort of round your characters out better in preparation for Dark Dimension 4, and how you can sort of make your characters a little bit different, I guess, and maybe some different strategies to use for Dark Dimension 4. So hopefully it's not just a slamming your face against it, kind of like how it is for the first 8 nodes with Phoenix, and even after that, to some degree, you know, it's not the most fun. So hopefully this might actually make some positive changes for Dark Dimension 4. I hope that ISO 8 comes out before that, so that at least we can work on that going into it. And so otherwise, I'm not really going to go too much into about ISO 8 for Dark Dimension 4, other than that I think it's going to be used for it. You know, there's going to be lots of different classes, lots of different levels and things to work on for your ISO 8s, and ways that you can improve, you know, like here with the healer thing, gain plus 10% max health and things like that onto your abilities. And so a lot of these things are going to go into making your character more viable for that Dark Dimension 4 mode. So I think the combination of ISO 8 and prepping a lot of your orange gear is going to make a huge difference, I think, for coming forward into Dark Dimension 4. If that made any sense at all. So otherwise, I think that's all I'm going to say right now about ISO 8. I don't think there's really a whole lot we can say, because there's only so much we have right now. But yeah, I think it's going to play a role for sure in Dark Dimension. And so I just wanted to round this video off by kind of going over through some of the things that you can do with your energy specifically. If you do have any spare energy, you know, this is going to vary by person to person. You know, I'm only actually spending about 400 energy on farming shards, and actually a lot of my energy right now is going towards farming orange gear. So outside of, you know, saving and you know, being careful with who you're upgrading, I think what you could do, if you do have some spare extra energy lying around, you know, start farming your orange gear a little bit more now. So I think things like the health catalyst, for example, I seem to always be low on these for some reason. So you can go into the find tool, and you know, there is a few nodes where they're at here, and a lot of these are in the new chapters. So Nexus 8.2, Nexus 8.5, and some of them have some decent purple gear alongside it as well. Like here's the purple advanced damage catalyst parts, which you might still need as well. Hero 7.7 and Villain 7.8 for that, for example. And let's just jump back over to the superior basic catalyst. I've actually been farming these. People might disagree on this, but I actually think it is actually a decent return on your energy. Now, I would never farm ABCs, the purple variant, but the orange variants, you actually do get 4 of them for every time you actually successfully get one. So I've gotten anywhere from, you know, maybe just 4 from one of the nodes, but I've gotten as high as like 12 or 16 if I'm lucky. So it's not too bad. They also do come with this one here, Hero 7.6, actually comes with advanced phosphates, which actually is not bad to farm as well. So I normally get at least 2 of these in daily. Normally this one, and lately the purple advanced splice X gene one over here for Nexus 8.3, because that one has I've been using a lot of purple gear for all the mutant characters recently. So I would definitely recommend this. And thirdly, if you do need some extra gear, there is these parts here. So these parts on the left, and I'm using Minerva because this is an example for tier 14. These items on the left are consumed the most. So the ones that require 10. So you need about 30 of these for every piece of tier 13. Now, if that's the same case, then this could possibly double, you know, for tier 15. I was wondering, I was trying to remember where we were at here. So yeah, you could end up needing more of these, and if that's the case, sorry, then you might need anywhere from like 60 per gear piece for tier 15. So you might, if you're running low on some of these, consider buying these. Now, what I've been running the most low on for those is actually the bio, because I've been doing a lot of symbiotes. So Venom, for example, these ones here, the superior isomers, I've been farming these like mad pretty recently, and my bio gear is starting to get a little bit low. So if you need to farm some of these, you can just click the find button, and you'll find some nodes. All of these are in the new chapters, so whether it's heroes, villains, or the new Nexus campaign chapters, you're going to find a lot of them there as well. So I've been farming this one, for example, Hero 7.4, that includes the superior isomer. It also comes with the advanced phosphates, so that's really a double whammy goodness here, because you're going to need both of those items. So I normally farm those. And normally, I think that's about all, is mostly the tech and the bio versions. I think I'm still pretty good on most of the other gear pieces. Just double check where I'm at for mutant. You know, I have a lot of mutant gear actually, so I'm doing fine there. So I'm not really farming those, but definitely the catalyst parts, because I know you're going to be using a lot of those for your tier 15 characters specifically. And the orange, I expect the orange basicalis, or sorry, superior basicalis to just, you know, 2.5 times is what the exponential rate was from 13 to 14. I expect it to be like that or more for 14 to 15. So you're definitely going to want to hold on to these. So when you get these out of the second run of Dark Dimension 3, hold on to as many of these as you can, guys, because you know you're going to need a lot of these to get to tier 15, I reckon. So making sure you have as much orange gear going into the possible gear tier 15 is going to put you at a huge advantage over other players who are just sort of spending all around on various characters. So if you don't need to bring them up, don't bring them up. You know, if you're going to use them in Dark Dimension 3, then definitely do that. And if those characters are ones that you think are going to be valid for Dark Dimension 4, you know, even better. So there are a lot of people who sort of upgraded characters in the beginning when Dark Dimension 3 first came out that they aren't really going to use and weren't of much value. You know, I know a lot of people who put into Shield Trooper, for example, and I even put into Punisher. Unless he's going to be really good for Dark Dimension 4, I just don't see, you know, he wasn't that great for me in Dark Dimension 3, and if you've seen any of my Dark Dimension City videos, yeah, he's just been basically taking his for me and hasn't really been contributing all that much. So you want to avoid bringing up characters that you aren't going to really make much use of in any of the Dark Dimension game modes. And there's a lot more wider variety of characters that are available now for, let's say, Dark Dimension 2 than there was available when I went through it. You know, I use characters like Jessica Jones, Groot, and Star-Lord, and Shield Security to get me through Dark Dimension 2. But these aren't characters I would never recommend now to bring up and to waste your orange gear on now, because you don't really need to do that when there are tons of better characters that you can do. And I think that's all I'm going to talk about just now about Dark Dimension and 4 in particular. But I think being future-minded will help you a lot in moving forward with your roster and taking all of these things into consideration as we move forward in the game over the next few months. Hopefully, when more details come out regarding either ISO 8 or Dark Dimension 4, we can plan a little bit better into the actual character specifics of the ones we want to invest more into. But for now, having a specific plan for Dark Dimension 3 is really important, and then we can sort of use that and work on that for Dark Dimension 4. Maximizing your overall potential use of characters to take into DD4 is what's going to keep you ahead of everyone else, even though we don't really know who the most viable characters will be or what the map is going to look like. We can still be a bit cautious and not waste too many resources on other characters. I hate to advocate for some sort of hoarding, but I think that if you don't want months of farming orange stuff, then this is probably what's going to happen. I didn't really touch much on mini uniques or superior uniques, but I think holding on to and buying as many of those as you can will help as well. Although they did mention in the blog post on Tuesday that they will be releasing a new campaign chapter which will make at least the mini uniques more widely available for players, so that's positive news there. In short, if you didn't catch the entire video, or I guess the TLDR or TLDW version would be really, to make sure the characters that you're upgrading into the orange level of gear is ones that you'll be using in either Dark Dimension 2, 3, or even beyond that, you know, depending on what point of the game you're in. Which largely means keeping to sort of meta-ish characters or ones that perform really well in these game modes. Also, try to keep a decent supply of all orange gear, including all the mini uniques and the superiors. And while ISO 8 isn't out yet, be mindful about it and how you'll want to use these with the upgrades going forward. I think that's going to be important to powering up some of your Dark Dimension 4 type characters. Anyways, that's all for me for today, guys, and I hope that you found some of this informative and gave you some things to think about when you're considering your roster development, especially with regards to Dark Dimension more generally, and what might be required going forward for DD4. If you enjoyed this video, then please smash that like button down below and let me know what you think about the coming DD4 and how you plan to prepare a little bit for it, or what you think the requirements might be beyond Gear Tier 15. And also, if you haven't already, then please consider subscribing to my channel for more Marvel Strike Force content. But until next time, guys, stay safe. Boylon signing out.